This story was submitted by an anonymous viewer. I was about 8 through 10 years old, and I had a friend who I would play with. She lived next door to me. We lived in upstairs apartments, and from these apartments, you could look directly out the back doors and onto a long street. On the left side of the street is where my grandmother lived, and next door is this guy named Joe. I never knew of him or his backstory, but my mom and everyone he grew up with knew his story very well. They just didn't say anything until later. My friend and I were looking for somewhere to have our own hangout, and we were playing alongside Joe's shed. We were saying that his shed would be perfect for our hangout, but we weren't about to ask him to use it since we didn't actually know him. Well, he heard us talking about using his shed, because he just so happened to be outside in his garden.
Sure, go on and use it, but you have to clear it out first. If you do that, then you can use it.
Now mind you, where I live nothing really creepy goes on. No kidnappings, rapes, or anything like that. We lived directly next door, and my grandmother lived right there too, so we accepted his offer. My friend was a bit nervous, since she had no clue who he was. She wasn't raised in the same area I was. Like I stated earlier, my mom knew of him, but I didn't, and they never told me much of him either. I trusted him only because I figured I was safe, so long as my mom actually knew the person, even though they were never really friends, and she never talked to the man. I was that damn dumb. A few days later, we finally decided we would clear out his shed, and when we do, we noticed cement. There were huge bags of cement, like 10 bags. There were also buckets that were coated with dry cement, shovels that were coated in dry cement, and dirty rags everywhere. It didn't scare me or anything, so I asked him where he wanted it, and he just said to put it down somewhere in the yard. He then asked us if we wanted a soda, and I of course said yes, but my friend was kind of freaked out. He invited us in, and she took off running to her place, saying that she was going to tell her mom. I just stood there like, well, okay then, more soda for me. I go to head inside, and when I get up to the doorway, the entire room was an orange color, kinda 70s looking. I also noticed rifles and shotguns hanging on the wall, laying on the bed, on the couch, on the table, and one on top of the TV, and huge dumbbells laying on the ground blocking a doorway. As I went to walk inside the house, I felt as though something was pushing me, not letting me in that house. I can't really explain the feeling. I don't know if it was because I was scared, or if I heard a little voice in my head saying, "Don't do it, leave now," or even some guardian angel. But whatever it was, I listened to it, and I took off running. That was the last time I ever talked to Joe. Fast forward 11 years, and I'm living with my grandmother and my mom, and his house is still right in front of us. If you look out the middle room window, you can see his house clearly. And he was in prison, but his daughter lived there with her husband/boyfriend and 2 boys. It was morning, and I woke up earlier than everyone else, about 6 or 7 a.m. I looked out of the middle room window and I saw 2 black vans in front of the house, signed coroner. I freaked out when I saw the police and SWAT team at his house. I woke up my mom shouting, "The coroner's at Joe's house." We were all awake by this point. We stood there and waited for hours. News crews came, more police, an ambulance, etc. Finally, we got told what happened. It turns out that he murdered a woman who was testifying against him in court. He took his time torturing her until he finally killed her. Here's the scary part for me, the part that makes me realize why I was so afraid to enter his house. He had just finished cementing her body into the floor of his basement the day he invited us into his house. We saw the body being taken out, and they couldn't even lift it because it was still covered in cement. The same cement I helped move 11 years prior. It was so damn scary. She had been buried right across the street for nearly 11 years. I can't help but to think what would have happened to me if I would have entered his house. The cement was probably still wet, so it would have been easy to add another body. I am sure I would have died, because I found out a bit later that he was a drug addict, as was the woman who died, and he had been like that all of his life. Apparently he had shot up a tunnel one time, screaming about how people were coming to get him. My mom and other neighbors knew about his past, but I really didn't want to know any more about it. That really scared me half to death. Let's just say, I see my town a lot differently since that happened, and I was never too trusting of people after that. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check out the description for information on how to submit your stories. Now in this story, whatever it was that kept you from entering the house, whether it just be a gut feeling or anything else, it's a very good thing that it happened. By the sounds of it, you would have easily been his next victim. I think you got really lucky that he didn't try to grab you, and the reason for that might have been because your friend ran off, so someone knew that you were there. Regardless, I'm happy you're safe, and that sicko finally got locked up. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.